from the Fred Group, and our topic is how to extract money from the government, or easy government cash. Fred, let's find out exactly what a SR&ED program is. What is that SR&ED program? Where does the money come from? Is it provincial? Is it federal? And what types of things qualify for a SR&ED?
Sure. So the SR&ED, as we mentioned earlier segment, stands for Scientific Research and Experimental Development, and which is also the acronym SR&ED, SR&ED, and it's a government tax incentive program, right? That's both to the federal government, but also most of the provinces also have a complementary program as well that piggybacks on that, and it's meant to encourage innovation, and it's meant to encourage innovation in a way that drives the Canadian economy forward. And so under that program, for a company that it was doing qualified work in Ontario, they would get up to 68% of that money back they spent as a tax credit. So what that means is if you have an employee you're paying $100,000 to, which is a fair sum, and that person ends up being completely eligible for this tax credit, means you would get a check for $68,000, which is huge. And yeah, so that has a major impact on companies. And the SR&ED program is also the primary and main way that the government incents R&D or incents R&D in Canada. There's $4 billion allocated to the program each year, and there's about 18,000 claimants. Yes, 18,000 claimants. And most of those, 75% of those claimants are small to medium-sized businesses. And most of those qualified expenditures are between $20,000 to $2 million.
So some good sized monies out
Absolutely.
there. And you mentioned how much money has the government, and this is a federal government program.
Yes, true.
And how much money has the federal government made available for the SR&ED program?
$4 billion
$4
annually.
$4 billion. Wow. What are some of the types of things that you've seen? So what are some of the types of experimental programs? And I mean, when we hear scientific, we're thinking biotech, advanced manufacturing, those types of industries. What are some of the things that you've seen, because you've been doing this for a while now, what are some of the things that you've seen go through that might have been unique or odd, or maybe something that's just not scientific at all?
Or that you wouldn't think of.
Or you wouldn't even think of.
And certainly I think the name Scientific Research and Experimental Development is a little bit intimidating sort of by its nature.
Absolutely.
But it really comes down to you just simply have to be solving technological problems where it's not readily known how to solve those. I don't believe the government didn't want to call it the R&D program, simply because they didn't want to...
Well, that would have been too easy to understand.
They didn't want to encourage or kind of give the impression that the bumble and stumble methodology of solving problems qualifies, which it doesn't. So really what they want to see is some kind of scientific, or really it just means logical. There was some logical approach to solving the problem that you encountered. But it does boil down to, you know, there being some kind of technological barrier or some kind of issue or technological challenge that was not readily known how to solve. You couldn't do a Google search to figure it out. You couldn't just buy a book, or you couldn't just go hire someone who knew it. It's not readily known. Doesn't mean that no one has solved it. Just means that you can't easily go out and find it yourself. And so even that definition of, well, what's technological uncertainty, you know, like there is a big gray area in this tax credit, right? And it's very subjective, and there's some elements of it that are highly subjective, such as, well, what exactly is readily known at a given point in time? What's readily known now might not have been readily known 6 months ago. And 6 months ago, what's readily known then might not have been readily known 12 months ago, right? And then also, what exactly is a technological uncertainty? So these are things that the CRA has to wrestle with, and they do the best that they can, and in large part they do a very good job. But I think the message is that as a claimant, you want to be very clear and succinct in your description of what those technological issues are. You don't want to have them mixed with business issues which don't qualify, or we had financial constraints, or we didn't have enough people on the project, which are, you know, that doesn't qualify. So the key really is to be able to boil down the argument and to distill it to the actual key elements. In terms of things that you might not think qualify, and I think also I should address that there's some kind of myth or kind of misconception. You don't have to wear a white lab coat and be working in a laboratory and have a PhD to qualify. The government really does want to incent businesses doing real work to try to push things forward and to really build and to really build the economy through that mechanism.
So what are some of the unusual things that you've seen SR&ED programs for? Sure.
Well, some of the things that you might not think of is a printing company that buys new printing equipment. You would think, well, where's the R&D in that? Quite often, especially in the GTA, it's a highly competitive market in the print industry, right? And so those companies often quite push things forward and kind of stretch that equipment beyond its intended use.
And we're going to come back after the break, and we're going to pick up with IRAPs right after the break. We'll have more with Fred Hausman and easy government money. We'll be back right after the break.